Hi friends, it's Becky, and it is time for another Bracelet Bash with me. If you're new to this type of format, what I like to do is take a bracelet design and then make it in several different variations using several different bead subscriptions or bead boxes that I've got. And I've got all my bits laid out here from my various boxes. I'll tell you which ones I'm using in a minute. But how I like to do it is I like to have a basic design and then I use the different bead boxes, and my hope is that in having this same design repeated with the different bead boxes, it gives you an idea of how changing the beads will change the design. It gives you permission to play with that design, make it your own, look around at what you have. You're absolutely welcome to copy one of my designs exactly. I love that. It would be fantastic. But if not, if you want to just use your materials, your beads, a totally different bead box, absolutely feel free to have fun and explore with this design. I do have a playlist that has my other bracelet bashes in there. I'll put the link to that playlist in the description below so you can explore some of the other ones that I've done. Like there was one with single loop memory wire, there's some with 2-hole beads, there's some that are double strand. It's just whenever I get like an idea or something, or just am really feeling a type of bracelet. I did goddess bracelets with it. Then I want to make multiples of them, and the funnest way for me is to do it with different beads instead of doing the same beads and the same things over and over again. So that's why I like to do this, and I love to share this with y'all. This is going to be a long video, so settle in, get a drink, put your feet up, maybe sit down with a project of your own and hang out with me while we're making this. I did get some feedback from some of my other viewers that I take too long to describe all of my materials before we actually start making. So instead of going through each of the beads that I'm using before we start making them, I'll describe the beads as I'm making it, if that's all right with y'all. But I am going to talk about some of the other things that I'm going to be using for this. I am going to be using some 18 gauge craft wire for one of the components that's going to be used in every single bracelet. And I've got this in 2 different colors. I've got silver and gold. Use whatever colors your heart desires for this. And part of this bracelet design involves stringing on some wire. And so I have 3 different colors that I'm going to be using with this. One is turquoise, one is fluorite, and one is garnet. And this is my favorite beading wire. It's Softflex medium, and it is really useful, very strong, and spectacular to work with. I'm going to be demonstrating how to make this one component either using the 1-step looper, round nose pliers, or a 6-step bell making pliers. So if you have this tool but not the others, you can still make this component. Or if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can make it with this one. Or if you've got this one, you can actually change up the sizes a little bit easier for that. So those are going to be used because I'm using craft wire. I'm using some flush cutters to cut things, and for all purpose opening and closing and doing things, I've got some chain nose pliers, and these are actually long chain nose pliers. And then for crimping my beading wire, I'm going to be using my magical crimper. It is my favorite way of doing crimps. You can use whichever way of crimping makes your heart happy and is easiest for you. Now, the bracelet design, I'm just going to go over the design and tell you about the anatomy of it. It is basically this design. And this is a bracelet that I came up with using some of my leftover beads after following the tutorial for this project by Deb Floros. And this was part of the Jesse James Beads summer camp, this design, and I absolutely love it. I fell in love with this design. It is one of my favorite things, and I wanted to have a bracelet that would echo some of the things that I thought were my favorite parts about this. And one of those was just the having the free-flowing chain that's sort of captured between some of these components, and then the beads. So when I made my bracelet design to go with it, and this wasn't part of the project, there wasn't a tutorial for it, I had to figure all of this out myself, I still wanted this chain to move freely on either side of my main focal, And then I've got my beads down for my first strand. So what I came up with was putting an infinity link through the loop of the beading wire, and then just having my chain go through those loops on the infinity link. So this infinity link is what I'm going to show you how to make. But let me just draw out so you can conceptualize this a little bit easier. The components for each of these bracelets, we're going to have some sort of focal in the middle, and it is going to be connected to a strung component with beads on either side. And then through that strung component, we're going to have our infinity link. And then we will have either a chain or a smaller strand with smaller beads going through that, so that it has that free movement but is still captured. And I don't know what to call this design, like captured chain. I don't know, something like that. But then they'll have their closures, whether it's a toggle clasp or a button closure, something else like that. So those are the components, but the main thing that all of these are going to have in common is that our infinity link is going to be where the chain goes through. So let's make an infinity link. This is pretty fun. I actually figured out a little while ago a simple and easy way to make an infinity link using the one-step looper. I did a short demonstrating this. So this will be something, if you're not able to watch shorts, this is a way for you to also get that information and to be able to do this. Now, I did a review on the one-step loopers. I'll put a link to that in the description below. I don't use this for everything, but this is a really handy way to do it. Now, this does only make loops that are 3 millimeters if you use the 3 millimeter looper, or 2.5 millimeters if it's a 2.5 millimeter looper. And for that, you've got fairly tiny holes, which work great for smaller chains like this one to be able to fit through and be captured. But it doesn't work as well for some larger chains like this. It's just, well, that one actually goes through. Good for that. But if, say, I was going to be doing a beaded thing, that 4 millimeter bead wouldn't go through it. And this chain is far too big for that. It's going to be a lot more difficult to go through, to pass through that 3 millimeters. So for those designs, I am using larger loops than I get with my one-step looper. But for these other designs that have these smaller chains, the one-step looper is perfect for this. So let me get, actually, I want to do my silver wire for this one. And let's turn this so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to set my wire in here across that. You can stick it all the way through, but that wastes a lot of wire. And when I pull that up, it makes me a little loop. Now that's not a centered loop. I'm not bending it back before I take it off. I'm just taking it right off as soon as it touches that. And then I'm going to cut that off with enough wire to be able to make that second loop. And at least 1 inch should give you more than enough for that. And then I'm going to stick it in here, and I'm going to make sure that my loop, the little P, the face of that is pointing down towards the handle, not up, because that's the way that we're going to get our thing. And it's going to be just kind of right next to there. And when that comes up the next way, it's going to cut that off and make my loop. And it didn't cut that off completely. That's okay. And it's a little bit wonky, but that's what your pliers are for, because it give it a little smush, and it not only work hardens it, but it kind of straightens it out and flattens out that link, and that makes a perfect infinity link or figure 8 link. So I'm going to set those aside for the project that's going to be on, and let's demonstrate the 6-step bail making pliers. For this, because I want to be able to fit larger things like these 4mm beads or the larger chain through this loop, I'm going to choose this 3rd step up, so not the smallest, 2nd, or not. This is I think this is a 5mm loop. And for this, I'm going to take my wire and wrap it around. See how it's there like that? And then just kind of scooch the wire around until it's touching there. And then I don't have to cut this off for this next part. I'm going to put this on here facing away from the loop that I'm wrapping around. And I'm going to start a bend around it and then scooch the wire around until it crosses over. Whoop, right there. And now that it's crossed over there, I can take my flush cutters and give myself a little nip right there, right above where it crosses that wire. And then get my pliers to smush it out because this is bendy again. And help close it. And that gives me a figure out 8 link that's going to be a little bit larger than the one that we did with the 1-step loopers. So that's how you can get a different size with it. And you can use the 1-step loop or any of these to make an infinity link with those. If you don't have either of these tools, you can still make an infinity link using your round nose pliers. Now to get the larger loop, you'd want to loop it around the part of your round nose pliers that's closest to the handle. To get a smaller loop, loop it around the end. I'm going to do the middle of my pliers because that's a decent size for my purposes. That's a little bit smaller than this large one, but not as small as the one that I did with my 1-step loopers. So just right there in the middle. And you can mark your round nose pliers if you want it to be super consistent, but it's basically going to be the same way as with the 6-step bail making pliers that we do this. Just going to put that right there in the middle, bend it around, and then scooch it until it touches that wire. And then wrap it around the opposite side. I'm just going halfway around before I scooch it. So I'm holding basically the wire still and then moving my link around my pliers back towards it. And right here where it crosses, that's where I'm going to do that. I want my flush end to be towards the end of this wire where the link will be. And then let's smush this flat. There we go. So now I've got all of my figure 8 links created because I did take some time and make some ahead of time. So you guys didn't have to sit through it for all of this. And so let's talk about what bead boxes I'm using real quick, because I am sometimes really happy when multiple monthly bead boxes kind of have similar color schemes. It makes my heart happy, and especially if they are color schemes that I love. So when we had a bunch of these dusty roses and turquoises and sandy colors in several of the bead boxes, this one didn't have as many turquoises, but it still had some sandy colors. This was the Gemstone Orphanage box. This is the Dollar Bead box. I'm also using some beads out of the Summer Festival Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Bead box. And you'll see those. That'll give me sort of more reddish as well as turquoise colors. And more, again, reddish and turquoise is going to be the Bargain Bead box. This was the Sandy, was it Sandy Shore? Or was it Desert Sands? it was something about sands. Desert Sands is this one. And yeah, this one, again, I wasn't finished using it. It fit the color scheme that everybody else was using. So I'm using that instead of the newer one. There's also this Voyage to Athens box from Sam's Bead box with some turquoisey colors and some other sort of pink or orangey vibes. So I'm going to be using that. There was a bunch of turquoises and things in the curated collection from Beads to Live By, so I'm using some of these beads in one of my bracelets. And I was going to maybe at first use the Sunset Splendor bead kit from Softflex, but I decided instead to pick some of these peachy and turquoise tones beads from the Just Peachy kit, because I haven't made anything with this yet. I loved this kit when I opened it, but I hadn't gotten around to making anything with it yet. So those are going to be the bits that I'm going to be making from. Let's start with the first one, and it is using the beads and chain and findings from the Bargain Bead box. And so first step is going to be making our focal. Second step is going to be stringing our beads. And then the third step is going to be attaching chains and putting everything together. So the chain and the links are going to go over here. I'm using the toggle closure that came from them. This is the chain that came in the box. Some of the bead boxes that I'm using, they had chain that came with it. And if it did, I will use those. Some of them I'm adding chain from my stash, and in those cases I will mention that so that you have that. And then for stringing, I love this Aquaterra Jasper. We're going to be using that, especially since it's got these red tones in it. We've got these red matte Malaysia Jade rounds, as well as these turquoise colored faceted rondelles. So these are going to be what we're going to be stringing on, and I think for this one I wanted to use the garnet wire for stringing. But first I'm going to make my focal, and so my focal is going to involve this barrel bead, 2 of these rondelles, and 2 of these bead caps. I'm using these metal spacers in the strung portion. And let's grab some wire because I am going to be using wire for this. Let me see if the 18 gauge fits, if these beads fit on 18 gauge. If they do, I'll just use that. If not, I'll switch to 20 gauge. Okay, so all of these fit just fine. So let's make just a link. It's going to have a loop on each end and the beads will be in the middle. I just had them right here. Alright. Actually, let's put these guys on first so I know how much to cut off. I'm just working from the spool on this. I want my bead caps. I'm only bead capping the bit between my barrel bead and my rondelles, like that, because I do want to see the color of my rondelles. Alright, so I'm going to just make a simple loop on the end. This is what the wire, the beading wire, is going to connect to on either end of my focal. So I'm just using the round nose pliers to make a loop, and then once it's made, I bend it back to center it. And then I push my beads up and measure from the bottom of the bead for 1 finger width. And now if I bend that over the top, if I pinch the bead here, right there at the bottom of my nail, that gives me 1 centimeter or 1/4 of an inch. And I can cut that flush and roll that up with my round nose pliers to make my second loop. So this is the July bargain bead box. The August bead box, most of us are getting that either this week or next week. If you live a little bit further away, you might not have gotten that yet. But this one was such a great one with some really fun colors. It was absolutely a joy to work with. So let me grab my other bracelet that I just had. I was going to use it as a guide for my length because it fits perfectly on my wrist. I was going to use this as a guide for my length on here. Here, how about that much? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. A little bit more, a little bit longer. What if instead of the metal bit, why don't I exclude the metal spacers and put one of these larger beads between them? And then a metal spacer at the end. Let's try that. I know. Turquoise bead. And then C7 jasper. And then the red bead. And a turquoise bead. No, turquoise on either side of that, and then red in between them. Maybe. All right. Whatever I do on one side, I'm going to want to copy on the other. And one of these guys. This is going to actually fit that space very nicely. Yes. So this is what I am going to be stringing. Let's get a crimp tube out. silver crimp tubes somewhere, but I have gold handy, so I'm going to use those. Because they are right here on my desk. And I'm just going to make myself a little loop right here. Now this loop is what I'm going to put my figure 8 link through. So I'm not going to want it too tight, but I'm not going to want it super big either. So a loop about that big will probably be perfect. And I like using the magical crimpers because I don't have to use a crimp cover. They work best on 2x2 crimp tubes and wire that is 0.18 to 0.19 in size, which this is 0.19, so it works perfectly on this medium wire. You want to center it on the little concavity on the inside of this. Give it a smush, and it smushes just the edges of your crimp, like that. So if you turn it and give it another smush, and then turn it and give it another smush, and just keep going from different angles. I mean, it's all going to be the same parallel, but just smush it from all of those sides. Those sharp edges and corners get smushed down into a nice round ball of crimp that doesn't scratch your wrist when you're wearing it. It's pretty nice to have that. I'm just feeding this extra bit of wire through the holes of these beads. So that here, I'm just going to snip a teeny bit of this off so that it's not poking out of that bead egregiously. There we go. Perfect. Alright, and I'm just going to do another loop on the other end. And I'm only going to be describing the process of crimping once during this video. That was it. The rest of the time I'm just going to go ahead and do my crimping because it will save a little bit of time if I'm not demoing it as well. Alright, so on the second side, you want to use your fingernail a little bit to give yourself some space between the bead and the crimp. And once again, center it. And go around. Alright. I am going to do the exact same thing on the other side of this. String that along and I'll be right back. Okay, so now that I have both ends strung, it's time to assemble this. And as you can see, if using this as my guide, this is going to be a little bit longer than this one. But I also added an extended chain to make sure that this would fit my wrist. I can actually clip it pretty close to this ring, so it's still a good guide for me to use. But I'm totally fine with it being just a little bit longer because then it'll sit a little more loosely on my wrist and it will be able to still be closed with this giant toggle clasp and wear on my wrist. So now let's put it together. And to do that, I'm going to get the links put through my loops, my beading wire loops. I'm going to do that by opening one of the legs, one of the sides of these infinity links like it's a jump ring. I just swing that open like that, and then feed it through the loop. I'm going to try and get that loop to kind of sit right here in the middle, and then close this on the other side, and that way. So I don't want it too big because I don't want the infinity link to be able to slide through that loop. So it's going to still have some movement, but it's not like choked up in there. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And I'm putting these in first because I'm going to feed the chain through them when I add the chain to either side. There we go. Alright, now I pulled out some 6mm jump rings that I'm going to be using this with, and I haven't cut my chain yet because I'm not sure exactly how long I want my chain to be. So what I'm going to do first is get, you know what, actually let's see how long I want the chain to be before I assemble it. Yes, let me get a piece of wire or something that I can hold these all up from and let them dangle just for a little minute, because I want both ends of my chain to be the same length. Oop, that wire is too thick. So let's get, oh, maybe the jump ring is the key. Alright. Oof. Get this chain on the end of the jump ring first. And then the end of the, I want my chain to be a little bit longer. So right there, like just 2 lengths longer, that would be a good place for me to cut that, so that it hangs loosely and isn't choked up next to it too much, because I do want to still have that movement. Alright, and now I need a second length of chain that is the same length as that one. So I'm just going to leave these 2 on here and add this third end. See, oh yes, this is perfect because I can assemble it and measure it at the same time. Sometimes this is harder than it looks. Sometimes it looks exactly how hard it is. I'm just trying to get this link of this chain, this loop, onto the jump ring. And it isn't going. It's entirely possible that I may need to go grab my 5mm jump rings instead of these 6mm ones. Nope. 6mm is working. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and close this since these 2 ends are exactly where I want them to be. No, because I'm going to use that too. Okay. So these 2 ends are exactly where I want them to be. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I'm going to hold this up so that I can measure this chain next to this chain. Make sure that they're the same length when I cut my second one. Move that out of the way. Okay, I'm going to cut that link right there. Okay, so now that those are cut, I'm going to take side A and kind of drop it through this infinity link, the hole in that infinity link. And it would be probably a lot easier if I used this instead of my fingers to do that, because I think, there we go. Wait, nope. Okay. It won't drop and pull out. Alright. So through one link, and then let's do the other one. Oh. So simple this is not. The weight of the chain pulls it back out of the thing when I let go of it. So I'm pinching it up here so that the chain doesn't drop and pull it out. Alright, now. Whew. Why was that harder than it needed to be? Didn't need to be that complicated. Alright, and then I need to get it through my second set of loops. And I want it to go through on the same side for each of these. So, here we go. Let's go through here. And this one. Perfect. Oh boy, fun with chain. And now, let's get these ends of the chain connected to jump ring. I shouldn't have as much trouble with the jump rings with the other chains that I'm doing because they are larger chains. This is one of the smaller ones. So I promise they aren't all going to be as painful as this. You know what? I am going to make this a little bit easier on myself and get a thinner jump ring just for this part to get those all together. And it is going to be this 5mm jump ring here. Let's open her up. Alright. Chain on. So that was so much easier. So much easier. Right, first chain is on. I'm trying to do it in the same order that it's laying on here. And that one. Actually, let's put this link on here. Close that link. Because I'm going to be putting my toggle on here and I like having extra links with my toggle so it has better movement. this toggle clasp. There we go. I'm just swinging those jump rings open and closed on that end. Now let's do the other end. I need you to twist things around. Okay. Now let's get my ring attached for the rest of this toggle, and then this bracelet will be finished. We can move on to the other ones because we are going to be doing like 7 bracelets today. And let's see how that looks when it's worn. Alright, I like it. I like it. Alright, bracelet 1 done. Alright, I'm going to do all the chain ones first, and then we'll move on to the ones where I do strands after that. So the next chain one that I want to do is going to be using the Just Peachy kit from Softflex. And I grabbed some of these blue, like melony beads. And then some of these peach crackle glass beads. And for my focal, I grabbed this really pretty oval peachy bead. So let's make our little focal in the middle here. I still have my 18 gauge. Does this fit on an 18 gauge wire? Let's make sure this is nice and straight. Yes, it does. Fantastic. And this is the loop, again, that the strung portion will be attached to. I curve that around to the end and then bend it back to center it. And then about 1 finger's width here, I can cut that off. It's basically making an eye pin. But that eye pin is going to fit here. Using my finger to bend, but you can use your pliers if you want to. I just want a right angle there, and I can cut off enough wire. It helps if you use the right tool for making loops, because those tweezer nose pliers are fantastic tools, but they do not make very good loops. I can promise you that. But these do. Okay, so there's my little focal. And then we will get this strung on here. I'm going to grab my turquoise Softflex for this one. And it's entirely possible that I will need to grab some other beads from that box so that it will be long enough. But we're going to try it out with these first to see. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and start with that one. I'm just going to do either or on these. see if that's going to be long enough. It's my size guide. I think I need a couple more beads from this kit. And I think they are going to be these rondelles. I'm going to try that and see if that's going to be long enough. It was an absolutely gorgeous kit, by the way. I am so glad I got one. But again, I had every intention of making something with it, and then I got sidetracked by other things, and life got in the way. You know how things go. I'm sure you all have some kits that you desperately want to make something with, but you just haven't been able to sit down and do anything with it yet. Or bead boxes, or something like that. I think that is perfect. That is the perfect addition for this. So let me grab, what is it, 1, 2, 3 of those. So let's do 2 more for the other side. There we go. And let's get this crimped on. All right. Do you guys want to watch me crimp? Probably not. All right, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead for you. I will do the crimping and string the other side, and I will come back when it's time to put this together. All right, so I got both sides strung up, crimped, and they're ready to go. And I also went ahead and cut off 2 lengths of my chain. Now this chain is from my stash. I think I got it from Bead Box Bargains, and it is just some regular gold curb chain like that. It's got the little twisty links. And these links are, they have a split in them, so I was able to just open them like jump rings in order to split these apart. I didn't have to actually cut my chain, and you can see the chain is just a little bit longer than these strands, which is what I wanted it to be. So same thing that I did before. I'm going to open up my infinity link, put it through the loop of my strung bit on one side of my focal, and then once that's on here, close it up. I want this to be on that side. Where are you going, buddy? There we go. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're just at the part where we are putting this together. We are going to change things up a little bit when we get to the part where instead of chain, we're using like strung things, but for now. Also, for closure on this, I thought it would be fun, instead of doing a jump ring for my lobster clasp to attach to do another infinity link on the other end. So that's what we're going to do. Just a little bit to have some fun with. Alright, let's get this jump ring open. And this is not going to be as much of a struggle because these are larger pieces of chain. So we're going to do one side, and then the bracelet, and then the other side. And I'm going to go ahead, since this is open, and attach my lobster clasp to this end. I don't have to come back and reopen this later to add my closure. It will already be ready to go. Alright, and this should be a little bit easier to do on this one than the other one. Just want to make sure that both ends of the chain, or both sides, go through the infinity link in the same direction. So I don't want it to like twist and have the other side go through in the opposite direction, because then everything will be awkward and weird. And everybody hates it when things are awkward and weird. It's the worst. So that is going through that way. Let's put this one through the same way. Oh, hey, that was a real easy way to do it. Huh. Alright, so we've got one side. Let's do the next bit. Why didn't I just do it this way? Why did I have to make things hard on myself this whole time? This whole time. That's okay. That's what we're doing. I'm finding the shortcuts for you. Alright, so now that that is strung there, I'm going to open up one end of this infinity link, just like it's a jump ring, and we're going to put our chains, strung part, and chains on, close it up, and look at that, we've got another bracelet. Come on, turn over, buddy. There you go. Another bracelet. That's bracelet number 2. Oh boy, I like that. That is pretty. That is really pretty. These are going to be real hard to photograph and have them look fun, but that's alright. Alright, so bracelet number 2 is out of the way. Let's start on bracelet number 3. This one is going to be using the Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Bead Box. This was the one that was the festival box, the music festival one. So we've got some reds and some turquoises and some gold accents, and all of these pieces came in there, and then it came with this chain, this beaded chain that has these tiny turquoise beads on it, and that's going to be our chain that's going to go alongside our main focal link area. And I made sure when I did these links, these figure 8 links, that the beaded chain would go through it. This chain would not fit through the 3mm links that you can make with the one-step looper, so you do have to use your pliers for that. And for that, I'd either use this second step in the bell making pliers, because they would fit on that, or go ahead and just use like the middle part of your round nose pliers for this one. So let's get this guy stranded, strung, yeah, strung. Alright, and I'm going to be using these, which I think I want to use the red, the garnet color wire for this one, because it's got the red accents. Yeah, that's what color I want on this. Alright. Put this guy on here, and then one of these big chunky bead caps. And then one of these barrel beads. A big chunky bead cap. Another one of these turquoise. These are actually dyed howlite, these ones, but yeah, I am not one to complain about it. And then we'll add these two, and it's entirely possible that I might need to add more beads if this isn't long enough, but we will see. Alright, let me get this with a little focal bit on there. Let's use my 18 gauge wire again. Make sure that's nice and straight. I'm just going to cut this edge flush because it is not currently. And there's pliers to make myself a little loop, and this is what the, again, the strung portion will be attached to. And the whole reason why I'm not stringing the whole thing is so that I have that loop to put the figure 8 through, which is why I have this bit here. Oh, and it's okay. I talked y'all through making these before, so I don't think you need the dialogue. Loop and a loop. There we go. So now let's put this guy up here and see if this is going to be long enough. This is a little bit longer than my focal part here. Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's going to be a perfect length. Here we go. I'm going to just make a little loop on this end and then connect the other end to here afterwards. Let me get the second part strung and get these all looped up, and then we'll have this connected, and then we'll put this part together. Okay, so I have both ends of my stranded part strung on here and connected to my focal, and then I kind of stretched out the chain next to it and cut off the length that I wanted that was just a little bit longer than this strung portion for one of my chains. And then it was super easy with these beaded links to just count the beads and just cut off the same amount for my second strand so that they are equal on that. So we're ready to get these guys together, and I decided that I want to do the same thing with this as I did with the other and use an infinity link and lobster clasp for my closure. So I've got those, a jump ring, and then I've got both of these other infinity links, and they are ready to go. Let me get this swung open. If I can find my pliers. And then I'm going to get it through the beading wire loop. Close that up. Make sure it's nice and closed. Okay. So that that's between that. And we're going to do that on the other side. Swing that open. Put it through the loop. This will be our third bracelet. We are moving along, I think. So let's start with the lobster clasp closure end. Put on the chain, the strung part. Those can lay flatter. And then another chain. And since I've already got this open, I'm going to add my lobster clasp. And close this up. Go. Huh. And put it through there. Grab it from the other side to pull it through. Do the same thing on this side. Put it through there. And grab it to pull it through. And these need a little more finessing because they've got these beads on them. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Drop it in and then pull it through. this in and pull it through. Right. Let's get that pulled through. I'm being gentle and careful. I'm just doing this side, then I'll do the other one. I hope if this was turned upright. It's getting caught on the beads, but it does move through it. There we go. And now I'm going to link this guy onto the other end. Swing that open, put on the chain, beaded portion and the other chain. Whoop. Hey friends. Go. So it's not coming off. You can close this up. Oh boy, it's nice and chunky. I like this. And then I can close there. I may end up attaching a dangle to this, but for right now, I think that is pretty good. Don't twist it. This end and that end to be on the right sides. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that is a pretty great bracelet. All right, I'm pretty happy with that one. All right, the next one is going to be using some beads from Sam's bead box, and this was the Voyage to Athens bead box. I grabbed these nugget beads, one of these aventurine giant nuggets, and some of these square sea sediment jasper guys, because I figured they might be great as little spacers on our strung portion with these guys here. And then for my chain, I'm using this seafoam colored 3-needle chain. This is just basically a knitted I-cord with very fine gauge wire. And if it's a little kinked, a great way to straighten it out so that it has its drape again is just to hold it and run it very gently through your fingers, but do it really slowly. And it's like the kinks and the little curls, they just fall away, and then you can use that. So that's how that's going to go on this. I am using some of the smaller made with 3mm, the thingy that makes it easy, one-step loopers, because the 3-needle chain is so small and delicate and it goes through very easily for that. So I'm going to be using those. For hooking all of these together though, I haven't decided if using the silver silk flat mesh connector or using these tiara cast crimps are going to be the best way to get this strand, the beading wire strand and this strand all connected into the same crimp. Probably going to try it with the flat mesh crimp. That's probably the best way that it's going to work, but we'll see. We'll see. So what I'm going to need for my beading wire portion is some bead stoppers so that my beads stay on there, because I'm going to need to do something a little bit different with that. But before I do that, let's go ahead and make our focal. And for this, I am just going to do the same thing that I've been doing with the other ones. We're going to make ourselves just a little beaded link with a giant bead on it by doing a loop on one end. Make sure that this 18 gauge will fit through this hole on this, and it does not fit. So let me check and see if my 20 gauge will work on this. And if 20 gauge doesn't work, then we will go for 22 gauge. I'll just keep going down until we find a wire that fits on this bead. 20 gauge. Which end is... Why are you so messy? There we go. Ugh, that's way too kinked. Straightening this out. Let's check if the 20 gauge works. It is stopping about halfway through. There we go. Going through that way worked just fine. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do a wrapped loop for this one. I'm going to bend this over and then bring my loop over the top of my round nose pliers. And then I'm going to open my round nose pliers and rotate them. And then bring this around the bottom of my round nose pliers until it's crossing over the stem of that wire right there. I'm going to hold on to my loop and push with my finger, or you can use another set of pliers to push your wire around that stem. I'm just going to go around a couple of times. And then I've got some excess wire. I cut that off. Oof. And that loop is at one end of this stone. For the other one, I want to have enough wire to be able to wrap another loop. So instead of 1 finger's width and cutting it off, I'm going to go for about 2.5 fingers width and cut it there. Alright, once I've got that cut, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, grasp my wire, and then bend over the top of that. That gives me some room right here to do some more wrapping with my wire. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did before with my round nose pliers, where I bring it up over the top, open up my pliers and rotate it, and then bring that around. And you can adjust it if you need to make it more centered. And then I'm holding on to my loop while I'm pushing the wire around that stem until I get down to my bead, or gemstone in this case. Right. I think I want to tuck that a little bit in there, in that space, because it is at a little bit of an angle. I really should have hung on to that. I'm glad that that didn't fly up and hit my camera or my eyes. I'm just adjusting my loops so that they are parallel to each other on this. Okay, so that is going to be my focal. I chose one of the beads that had a good portion of orange tone to it so that these would go really well with it. And I think for my stringing material for this one, I want to use my fluorite color because it's this really nice, like almost sage green. And it's just going to blend in really well for this. So let's see, I think let's do 2 of these. And then 1 of the squares. And then 2 of these. And then a square. Let's see where that has left us. So that's a bit longer than my star. I think just 1 more on the end. 1 more on the end there. And that's going to be definitely long enough. Alright, so like with the other, I am going to time travel, and I'm going to get both ends strung up and attached to here, but the ends, we're going to be treating them a little bit differently because instead of having a little loop on the end that we put onto a jump ring, we're going to be having this end be captured in here alongside these two. So I'm going to end up with something like this happening in order to get these connected. So let me get the second side strung and I will get this crimped onto here and I'll meet you back here so we can continue on from there. Okay, so I've got these strung and it's crimped to my focal, but I don't have the ends crimped. This is still attached to the spool on this end. So I'd like to get them crimped before we proceed with any of the rest, including before we put our little figure 8 guys on there. So what I want to do to crimp it is I don't want to use my magical crimper to make it into a ball because the ball won't fit as nicely into this flat mesh thing, but I don't need a really big lump here on the end of wire. So I think what I'm going to do is just cut this a little bit more and see if I can bend this more to here. Stuff this through. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I might have prematurely cut that more than I needed to for my wire, because now this is going to be difficult to maneuver into here. I don't want a big loop. I want most of this wire to disappear here at the end so that I just have a crimp. Okay, hold on. Not all is lost. I'm going to do a lot better job on the other end, by the way, because I'm not going to cut it short before I do this. That was a big mistake. You know what I could do? Scooch that up a little bit. Fold it over. I don't want it to go in the... Maybe I do. I just really don't want very much of this wire showing because I'm mostly going to be trying to get the crimp to hold on to the crimp there. And what I'm going to do right now is smush it flat so it fits in there easier, like that. So that should go really well right there into this. It's a flat mesh crimp that you get from Silver Silk. I'm going to be putting that and both of these ends in there and crimping it shut. So that should work pretty well for that. I'm going to try and do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to start with a little more wire to start with, and then bend this over into that part there. Okay, good, good, good. Okay. Go right on the end. And again, I'm just using my pliers to smush it flat instead of making it into a round crimp, because I want that end to go into the flat mesh crimp with the other bits. Okay, so now that these ends are crimped and they're not going to go flying everywhere, when I start to maneuver it, I'm going to get my figure 8 links into these loops, and then we will start on one end by crimping all 3 of these together. Then we'll put the 3 needle chain through the loops and crimp the other end. Alright, yes, that's how it's going to go. I suppose I could put the 3 needle chain through before then. I don't think I really need to. Do I? Probably not. Probably not. And I swung that one too wide. Too wide. Alright, now I cut these a little bit longer than these, but also a little bit longer than I needed to, so that over here at the very end of my 3 needle chain, I can fold it over, because that's going to make it a lot easier for the flat mesh crimp to hold it. So let's take this other end. I've got some bits of wire that can come off. There we go. Fold that one over. Alright, now let's put in one of the 3 needle chain bits. This is going to be a little bit awkward. Where's my pliers? There we go. I'm going to be holding these in the pliers that I'm going to close them with. I'm not going to close it until after they go in here. You can see it's got these little teeth that grab on to the Silver Silk. So I'm going to put this one in first. Well, maybe I will just hold them all 3 together and then try to maneuver them in together at the same time. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Plus that third one. It is not going in. Does that one need to move over a little bit? I think it might need to move over a little bit. Come on, buddy, go in the hole. That's not where I wanted it to be. It's going together, guys. Okay, that one goes in there. Why won't you stay? And that one goes right there in the middle. Come on, buddy. Not was I closing it while I was holding it? Dang it. I think I might have been doing that. So I'm just going to open it up a little bit wider using these pliers. Because I think I was closing it while I was trying to hold it. I was just trying to hold it gently, not close it until these were all in there. See, that'll go in there a lot easier now. Oh boy. This is extremely fiddly. So this is my first time doing this way. Ah, I just had an idea. See how there's like a little teeny loop here at the end? What if I just grabbed some beading wire, right? Or not wire, thread. And I'm just going to go through the end of this, go through this loop, and then go through this, and that's going to hold these together. Whoop. Just want to go through the wire, because I can pull this thread out after I get it crimped, not cramped. But that will hold these together while I try to get it crimped. See? Whew. All right. I need to get all of these into the crimp, which I think is closing again. Is it closing? Let's get these guys all in there. It's closing up on me again. Hold on. Come on, buddy. It's supposed to close it after you get it in there. I was just holding on to it too tight with my other pliers. That's all. All right. Ha! have another one. My foldy over bit isn't as foldy over anymore. They're getting in the way. Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Let's get them in there. Okay, now that they're in there, I can squish it flat. Hold your breath. Give it a good smush. Make sure they're in there. In there, in there. Okay, I'm gonna pull out my beading thread. Ta-da! Ah! Oh boy, that was way harder than it really needed to be. Way harder. But this crimp is gonna hold it just right, I think. All right, so the other side, I'm gonna swap out for a different one that's open wider, because that one has just been closed and opened and closed and opened, I think, a little too often, and it's gonna be a little bit easier for me to do it this way on the other end. All right, let's go through. This is much stiffer than the other chain. It's 3-needle chain, so I can thread it through both sides of this pretty easily. And we're gonna want that to be on that side. Okay. Oof. I'm gonna need to turn this around, probably. And that's gonna be on that side. All right. So go through there. And this one, going through in that direction, and in that direction. Alright, so this is way easier. Alright, so now that I figured out how to get these guys all together, using that beading thread, let's bend over the end. Try and get rid of this little bit of extra wire. Bend over this end, like that. Bend over this end, like that. And then get my needle with my beading thread that's going to hold these guys together. Go through this wire, through this loop, through this wire. It's like basting something before you stitch it. We're just temporarily holding these. But I have them turned around so that they're on the wrong sides of things. So let me get these guys all on the right sides of things. As doot, doot, doot. All right. Oh boy. What an adventure, eh? And then let's get all of these guys smushed into here. All together. All together. And wait a minute. Am I facing the right way? Yes. Oop. All right. Pull out my thread. Phew. Ah, no. No. It wasn't smushed enough. All right. I'm going to try it again. Okay. One more time, one more time. Say maybe like the 6th time's the charm? Am I counting right? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay. So I've got that one, this one, and I got a little messed up. There we go. And yes, that is the right order for them to go on. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Or not. This is just some leftover beading thread from another project. It would have just gotten thrown away, but it's still on its needle, so it was very handy for me to pick up and do all of this with. Alright, now, friends. Let's get all of you in there and smooshed as far in there as we can. As far in as we can. And then, whoop, that is not what I wanted it to do. This thing is not. I need to spread this again. I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes you have struggles. Hope I'm not the only one who has struggles with things like this. Hold your breath, hold your breath, hold your breath, because I think that did it. Let's make sure. I'm gonna get this little tug, and this little tug, and this little tug, and they are all in there. Alright, so this thread has had it. Oof, it's not coming out there. Let me just cut that on this side. Pull it out this side. There we go. Alright, I'm going to be happy with that. Okay. Now I need some closures. Let's get some jump rings and a lobster clasp. I hadn't already picked out a closure before I started with this one. So we're just going to do some regular old jump ringy thingies. And if I need a little extra room, I can attach a chain as an extender. But I probably am not going to need that because this is already without the clasp as long as this one is. So with the clasp it'll be just a little bit longer. There we go. That's gonna go around there, sit underneath there. Alright. Whew. Alright, that is, I think, number 4. We've got 5, 6, 7. Alright, one more that is going to be with chains, and then we're going to move on to ones where instead of chains along the sides, we'll just have strands of strong, you know, the guides. Smaller beads. Okay, and this is some really pretty, like, diamond cut kind of chain that came with the Gemstone Orphanage box. And so I decided to pick out some beads that would be lovely in this kind of design. Would go with this. And so I've got some of these beads that came in the box, and I can't remember the exact names of them, but there are oceany guys with some of the this red obsidian stuff, and this what is this? I can't remember the name of this. It's a little diamondy star. So that's going to be our focal, and then we're going to have 2 strands. With these guys strung out on either side. And then I wanted to do a little dangle on this one using that. And then I've got some closures from their bag as well. And I'm going to use the garnet color because it's nice and red. It'll go blend well with the darker beads. I think that that's going to work for us. Alright, let me see if stringing this is going to be long enough. Now I don't have to do any wire wrapping for this focal because it already has loops that I can attach this to directly. So that is nice. Come on, buddy. I'm just trying to see if I can get all of these. This is a type of jasper, and I can't remember what type it was, but it was really pretty in that box, and my gemstone I think was the same type of stone. So let's see if that's going to be long enough or if we're going to need a couple more, because we've got enough. We can make this as long as it needs to be. Where's my guide? There we go. Alright, that's not my guide, this is. So we've got our focal right there in the middle, and this focal is about the same length. So I think two more of these guys. Let me just double check that that's going to be long enough. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so that is going to be what I'm going to string. I'm going to go ahead and string it and get it crimped onto here. We're going to have some loops on the ends, and I'll cut my chain to the length that I want to, and I'll meet you back here when that's ready. Alright, I've got both ends strung and attached to my focal, and I don't know why I couldn't remember the name of starfish. I was like, sea star? Star of the sea? Those were the thoughts that were going around in my head. It's a starfish, y'all. It's a starfish. So let's put the rest of this together. I went ahead and cut my lengths on my chain. So this should be pretty easy to do. I am also going to be using another figure 8 loop as my closure, just because I'm having fun making them. So let's get these guys into these loops so we can start attaching our chain and getting these together. And I'm pretty sure that the reason why I am having trouble remembering the names of words is because I have been working straight through and I need to take a little break and have a meal and do all of that. And so after I finish making this bracelet, I will take a little break. It won't seem like I'm taking a break to y'all because I'm just going to go right back into making the next bracelet. But I do want to remind any of you that have been with me from the beginning of this video that if you need to take a break, you absolutely should. Take a break, stretch your legs, grab something to drink, maybe have a meal. Take care of you while you are doing this. This is 7 bracelets are a lot, especially if they are bracelets that are fairly on the complicated side like this one is. Open up my jump ring over here, and just like with the other ones, I'm going to open it up, put my chains on, this one and that one, and then also attach my lobster clasp, and then give this a close. Alright. And I am getting much better at putting these chains through, I think, because I can just drop it through, and then drop that one through, do the same thing on the other side. I think probably one of the nice things about doing something multiple times is you do figure out more effective ways of doing it. And I'm just twisting this chain so that it is flat, so that when I attach it to the other thing, it's not going to be all twisted up. I'm going to do the same thing with this side, make sure that it is flat on there, on that end. I don't want that one to be all twisted up. This is a chain that is going to be a lot more obvious if it's all connected in a twisted fashion, rather than some of the other ones that you won't really notice. Alright, so now I've got my figure 8 loop, and I am going to open this end, put on first 1, 2, and 3, and then close it. And then because I'm going to use this shell as a dangle, I'm going to open up the other end and attach that like this. Aha! Super pretty, super beachy. Alright, that is number 5, and I am going to go grab something to eat, and I will be right back. For you guys, it won't feel like any time has passed, but for me, I will be refreshed and ready to continue on with the last 2 bracelets, and these 2 are going to be different in their construction, because instead of chain, I am going to be stringing some beads. So we're going to have 3 strands of strung beads. So I'm going to go grab something to eat. I will join you back here in a minute. For you, it's going to be like that. And now I'm back. I was just taking a minute to look at all the bracelets that I've made and just kind of noticing how great they all look together. Because again, like, just serendipity with so many of these bead boxes having similar color schemes, and just I'm not tired of the way that these look together at all, or these colors together at all. I think they look fantastic. So I am really pleased with these. It was nice to be able to take a minute and just kind of, you know, admire my work. It's something that is important to be able to do, is admire your work for a little while. Now this next bracelet that we're going to make is using some beads from the dollar bead box. This was the August dollar bead box, the one that we just got and just opened. And then I've also got some beads from the dollar bead bag here that I'm going to be using. They are the 3mm and 4mm fire polish beads. And then we've got these really fun check glass beads, and then this jasper bead that is going to be my focal. So because I'm not going to be using chain for this, I'm going to have my focal bead with my big long stranded things. I'm going to have 2 other strands on the other side that are with these fire polish beads, and so those are going to be my strands instead of my chains. So because I want the side strands to have a little bit of movement and more flexibility, I'm going to be using this fine wire instead of the medium wire for the sides. The medium wire I'm still going to use for the central part for that. So let's make our focal with this central bead. I'm going to just make a big old link with my 18 gauge wire. Hold on, let's make sure that 18 gauge will fit. And it fits easily. Easily. Alright. Just making this flush. Round nose pliers are where? There. Alright. Alright. Got one loop. Now let's make another loop on the other side. Loop like that. All right. Now I'm going to see if these by themselves will be long enough or if I need to stick some beads between them, because I can't stick some beads between them if I need to. And I'm going to string these on the turquoise Softflex because we are leaning heavily towards the pink and I want some pops of blue peeking out. Alright, where's my measuring stick? Keep in mind we need crimping space. I think that's going to be long enough actually. Maybe just a little bead between these two. Let me pull out. I don't want to use these beads yet because I am going to be stringing with those. But I think one of these small 3mm beads would be great, probably. Just to add a little bit of space and buffer between them. Just a teeny bit. Like this. Whoop. There we go. I like that. I like that a lot. Alright, let's get this crimped on here. And this is going to be a little bit different, like I said, than the others as far as the construction goes. I'm going to be crimping it onto the middle, but the end is not going to be crimped until we get the rest of this all put together, because these strands and this strand are going to need to be crimped together on the ends, but this end can go in here just fine. So that's a difference that we're going to be doing in the construction. Let's make our little loop here. Again, big enough that the 18 gauge wire can fit through it, but not so big that the loop slides through it. I want it to fit in there but not fall out of it. And I'm just doing my crimping. And yes, I am. Oof, still attached to the spool, which makes it a little bit more awkward, but that's okay. Because awkward is where I live. I don't know if I should have admitted to that, but you know. Here we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just going to cut over here. I'm going to give myself a couple of inches. Actually cut. And I'm going to use a bead stopper so that it does not go flying when I attach the other end. Which is going to happen now. These light blue guys. These guys. Light blue guys. crimped. Okay, now two inches on that end, and a bead stopper. Alright, so now I need to string the other two strands. Before I string those on, I'm going to put these guys through their loops so that as I'm stringing, I can feed my my wire and my beads through these loops so I don't have to go back and feed it through afterwards. I can just do it while I'm stringing. It's going to be a whole thing. Now I have decided that I'm going to do a button and loop closure, which means I'm going to do a beaded loop on my beading wire, and the other end of my bracelet will have a loop through this little button that you see on my bead mat. This is a Terra Cast button that I pulled out of my stash. And I really like it because it's sand dollary. And since this is an ocean themed box, I figured it would look really good with that. Look at that sand dollar. It's got a shank on the back for this. So this is what we're going to start off with. Is I'm going to get that button attached, and I am going to crimp one end with that before I start stringing these beads. Fun times, fun times. Alright, I need this to be that long, at least as long as these, because that gives me some crimping room, and then as long as that is again, and then just a little extra for good measure and fun times. So I'm pulling off enough beading wire so that I'm not going to be working from the spool, because I'm going to be doing each end at once. I want the center of this beading wire to be where my button lives. So I'm going to slide that button on there, and then I think I want some 15-ohs around that to kind of protect the wire from where the button will be rubbing. So let me grab these 15-ohs from my curated collections. They are nice and turquoisey, and they will go great with this. These are also what I'm going to use on the other end for my loop. So let's spill that out and let's do 5 on one side and 5 on the other. 3, 4, 5. Because 15-ohs go so much easier on the fine beading wire than they do on the medium beading wire. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got both of these. And where are my crimps? Because this is going to be the super fun part, is getting all of these crimped together on this side. By super fun, I mean kind of fiddly. Alright, I'm going to get both ends of this beading wire through my crimp tube. And normally this beading wire would be too thin to crimp with this size of crimp tube, but I'm also going to be stuffing this medium beading wire in there. So it should hold just fine. I've got that pushed down there next to the 15-0s. And I'm going to take that bead stopper off of there and feed this through the crimp. Come on, buddy. Like that, maybe. All the way through the crimp. See what I mean by fiddly? It's just a matter of getting it at the right angle. Alright, so now that that's coming through, I'm going to pull that wire there. And now, where is my crimper? Alright, so I've got my medium beading wire coming through this way, and I've got my fine beading wire doubled over. And going through the button. This is not going anywhere easily. This button is going to be a little bit in the way, but that's okay, because I'm just going to center this crimp bead, make sure that I'm not squishing any of those 15-0s. Give that a smush. Turn it. Again, make sure the 15-0s are clear. And that is centered. Turn it. Okay. Just give that a tug to make sure that it's good. And that is nice and connected. So I'm going to cut the excess of the turquoise wire off of here. There we go. Whew. I am going to be doing something similar on the other end to connect this strand down here after I get this done. Alright, now let's split these up into two piles because I'm going to want one on one side, one on the other. I should have done this before I started filming, but that's okay. Alright, now I may need to eventually maybe pad out my thing by using some 15-0s as spacers, but for right now I'm gonna go with these. And let me see, I'm gonna do pink bead, a blue bead, a pink bead. then I'm going to do one of these sandy colored beads, a blue bead, and a sandy colored bead. I'm just going to repeat that all the way down the length of this and also on this side, so that I have both of these strands going along either side. And I'm going to see if that gets me long enough, just with half of each of these piles, and if it's not long enough, then I'll add these, and I will be back here once I've got all of these strung, so you don't have to wait with me while I do all of that stringing. So the good news is that I do have enough beads to go on either side, and as I was beading it, I just went ahead and passed my beading wire through each of these loops and then continued beading. So it made it actually super simple for me to get the beads and the wire all connected like that. Now I've got 3 wires over here. As you can see, this is just a little bit longer than the other side, but that's perfect because that means it gives me enough room for this to bow in towards the center here. So let's grab another crimp tube, because this is going to be the more complicated crimp. I know you're thinking the other one wasn't complicated. Well, just you wait. Because what I'm going to be doing with this crimp is passing all 3 strands through in the same direction. But I'm also going to be making a little loop on the end with one of these smaller wire strands and passing it back through going the other direction. So before I do that, I need to pick up some 15-0 seed beads so that I can make a loop that protects the wire as it goes around my button. So I'm just going to string on a whole bunch of seed beads and see if it is long enough of a loop to fit around that button. It is definitely going to be more than 15, probably more than 20, probably 30-ish. Let's try it with that length. If it's too many, I can take some off. If it's not enough, I can put some on. So that is 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay. Just gonna do this loop over here at this end without all of these coming out of here. Come on, friends. Well, you gotta be like that. Whoop. I'm gonna just bead stopper those 2 strands so they don't come apart while I'm working on this strand, because they're not crimped yet. And I'm just gonna make a little loop. And this is probably not enough. I'm probably gonna need to add 10 more, because yes, this does not fit around that button. So let's add 10 more, that'll make it 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and let's check. And I always have to check my size because buttons come in different sizes. It's one of the fun things about them. So that they come in different sizes and sometimes different shapes too. And it looks like 40 is going to be just large enough for that to fit around. Perfect. That means that I can feed this back down through the crimp and then start adjusting all of my wires and then do my crimping. So crimp is down there. This wire is tightened up. This wire is tightened up. And this one is going right back into it. There's got to be enough room for it. Please be enough room for it. Yep. Perfect. Alright. Just going to need to wiggle this around a little bit before I crimp it to make sure that I am not crimping on top of any beads so that those 15-0s are clear and not about to get crunched. I've got a 15-0 falling in there. There we go. That is sliding right out. There we go. Phew! Alright, so first crimp is done. We turn and clamp, turn and clamp until this is all done, all the way around. And now, all I have to do is clip off my extra wires and this bracelet is done. So see, it was a little bit different construction to get to it, but you end up with a similar style of bracelet. It just doesn't have chain, it has these beaded strands going up the sides and then connected right there to go alongside of it. I love that. That is great. I'm so pleased with that. So I'm going to be doing something very similar to that with my curated collection. That's where I got these 15-0s from. And this is the Beads to Live By curated collection that we just got this month. I got these gorgeous looking little check glass shield beads in the check glass companion bundle that came with that, and I also got these fire polish beads with that too. Then I've got these seed beads. I've got some 11-0s, some 8-0s, and some 6-0s. I think I'm going to save that for another project. I think these guys are going to all go together. And then I really like these like sort of luster AB finish 15-0s, and I think that's going to be my my closure. I pulled another button out of my button stash. It's another tiara cast button, and this one is like this. It does not have a shank, so I'm going to be going through it with my 15-0s in order to get that on there. And then I've got my, again, my infinity links. So I'm going to make my focal with this check glass bead, and then I'm going to start stringing down each side. And then when I am done stringing, I'm going to figure out what my side strands are going to look like. So I think these larger beads are going to be on my side strands with maybe this check glass, or on my center strands, and then I think these are going to be on my side strands, these 3mm and 11-0 seed beads for that. So that's what we're going to do. And then my 15-0s are going to be for my closures. Alright, and it's going to be very similar in construction to the one that I just made, where I'm going to be using my beading wire, my medium beading wire in the middle, and then my fine beading wire for the sides. Where did I put that fine wire? Alright, so let's get my center started. Where's my wire? I keep setting things on top of my wire and then losing it. Alright, I'm just making sure this is straight and warmed up. Let's see if this 18 gauge fits on this check glass, and it does. Barely. Alright. Let's make ourselves a little loop. Now I am not forcing it on here, but I can see how if it wasn't as straight as it is, you might have to. But yeah, so make sure it's super, super straight, or stick with a 22 gauge for this. But this is going to be good for me for now. Oh, you know what? I was using silver. Alright, make sure it's straight. And flush. Here we go. There we go. Right there at the end. I love like this wave pattern on this. It's one of my favorite things. I think the finish is called a silk finish when you have these waves in it, or a silk type of bead glass. I don't know. I would like to learn more about how these get named and all of that sort of thing. Maybe one of these days I will save up enough money to go on one of the bead excursions that some of our beading friends have. Like sometimes Jill Wiseman goes to Czech Republic and brings people with her. Sometimes Cassandra goes to Czech Republic and brings things with her. And that would be super fun to visit, because my uncle lived there for a long time, couple of years in the 80s, which was really interesting. It would be so cool to see some of the same sights that he saw. Alright. Now let's get some of these beads out. And some of these 6/0s. This is a very turquoise. Some of these lovely gray beads. Very great. These are 8/0s. They are a great neutral to pair with these to give us more of that callback to silver that we're going to get with these beads. And once more, I need my beading wire, which is here. Alright. So let's do an 8/0, and then a fire polish and an 8/0, and then a 6/0. Then an 8/0, a fire polish, an 8/0, and then a 6/0. Like that. And I'm going to string that until I have enough. I'm going to get one end connected here to my focal. I'm going to do it for each side, but I'm going to put my springs, my little bead stoppers, on the ends so that when I am ready to start my side stringing, we can crimp this strand with the fine strands for that stringing to go on. So I'm just going to repeat this until I have it long enough for my central one, and I'll meet you back here when that's done. We are in the home stretch, my friends. I have both strands of my center strand. I have some bead stoppers on the ends, and I went ahead and added my links to the center so that I don't have to do that later. And I am going to start this with my double length, this length, but a little bit longer, of my fine wire. And I'm just going to put on 3 15-0 seed beads right here. 1, 2, well, 1, why is that having trouble jumping on there? 2, 3, for the center. So I've got my 3 15-0s. And then I'm going to put this button on my wire by putting both ends of my wire through each hole of the button. And I'm going to put on 5 15-0s on each end of my wire. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that side. If I can actually get these on here. There we go. And let's do 5 15-0s on the other end of my wire. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so that means that I have 13 total 15-0s. And they are small enough that they will go through the holes on this button. But the button can rotate. And now we're going to do that same really fiddly bit where I get both ends of this wire through a crimp tube and put this down to the end. And then I take one end of this and I put this wire through that same crimp tube, going away from the longer parts of the wire towards the button. Let's tighten that up this way. And I am making a mess of my bead piles, and that's just going to have to be okay. Just finessing my wire so that I have all 3 of these, and I want these wires to kind of be spaced out a little bit better on here. Alright. Alright. This was where we're at. Let's get this crimped. Make sure I am not squishing any 15-0s. Good, good, good. Let's go around. Make sure that everything gets crimped together. And that is good. And in there. Alright, so just like with the other one, I'm going to work both ends of this wire. But unlike the other one, I'm going to do different beads on each side. On one side, I'm going to use these silvery matte beads, and on the other side, I'm going to use these light turquoise beads. But I'm going to use these 11-0 turquoise beads on both sides, just as a spacer between each bead, and that will help tie them both together. But it will give me a little bit of interest on that. So I'm going to do this on each side, where I add those beads, and then on the other side I'm going to do the same thing but with these other 3mm fire polish beads. On that side. So one strand will be with the silver and the other side will be with the turquoise. And when I get to these loops, I'll just go ahead and pass my bead wire through there and then keep beading. And then when I get to this loop, I'll pass my bead wire through there. And when I'm finished and it is beaded to the same length, well, maybe just a little bit longer, maybe one bead longer than this, I will come back and we'll finish up the other end. Alright, so let's finish this up. As you can see, I went ahead and strung one side with the silver and one side with the blue. It looks really great, I must say. I like that a lot. So we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other, where we're going to bring these together into one crimp. And then I'm going to bend one of these around to make a loop and pick up some seed beads. I'm going to use these white seed beads to make a loop large enough to fit around this button. So let's get our crimp tube in place first. Step one. Let's get that middle strand in there. Alright. And so two of these I'm going to clamp with this bead stopper to keep them from going anywhere. On this third one, I'm going to start picking up some 15-0s with. And let's start with 30 and go from there. This is not picking up very many of these. This will probably be a little while. That's okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 28, 29, 30. Alright, let's see how many 30 is. I'm going to scooch these up and away from here because this coil will get in the way. Now this just needs to fit over the narrow end of this button, but it does need to go all the way around the button. And it looks like I need a few more beads. I'm going to add 5 more. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice this is a different amount of beads than what I used on the other button because this button is a different shape and a different size. So this is how you know how many to put on there. So if this will go around and the button will go through, I think that is a perfect amount, so 35. Alright, and I'm just gonna turn this back around and put it through this crimp while those others are being held by the clamp. Just making my life easier on myself. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. It is going through a bead, that's fine. That is fine. Alright. Take this off. Finesse these just a little bit. And oh no. Looks like I broke one of my 15-0s. I wasn't even squeezing at all. It was just when I was trying to fit this around. I hadn't even squoze yet. That's crazy. That's okay. That's totally okay. Because I still have enough to go all the way around that button. Clip both of those. Clip this guy. Ta-da! Now I have a bracelet. Alright, I will do a try on with y'all on my weekly wrap up next week on Sunday. I will probably need to use my little bracelet buddies that I made to get these guys on there. Well, some of them. Others should go on just fine. Oof, I sort of love the way that looks right there like that. Let's pull the rest of them out and we'll just take one last look at all of the bracelets that we made. So we've got this one that I made with the curated collection, this one that I made with the dollar bead box and dollar bead bag. This one here was with the gemstone orphanage box for July. Wait, no, it was June? Yeah, July. They're bi-monthly, so sometimes I have to count backwards to see which month it was supposed to be for. Alright, and then we've got this one with the Sam's bead box, and I used some silver silk 3-needle chain to go with it. And then you've got this one with this was the July bargain bead box. We just got our August ones, so I didn't use that for this. Because, I don't know, the color scheme, right? And then we had the Just Peachy kit. This was for the TGBE, that's the Great Bead Extravaganza from Softflex. Most of these are subscription boxes except for this TGBE one. That was a one-off box that, well, bag that Softflex put out for that. And then we've got the Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Bead Box. And this one was the Summer Festival box. And I love that. But yeah, look at all this turquoise. Look at all these peachy tones. These are just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And this was exactly what I needed to be able to get that creativity out for that design. And then just one last look at my inspiration piece. That's the one that I made to go with that necklace I fell in love with that Deb Floros made. Anyway, I hope you enjoy making along with me or just hanging out with me while I make things. Let me know if you're going to try one of these. And if you do, I would love to see how it turns out. Anyway, I hope y'all are having a fantastic week, month, day, year. Happy beading. And I will put links, by the way, to all of these bead boxes that I've used in the description below. As I said, the Softflex one was a one-off box, but I'll put a link to them because they usually have design kits that I think are really worthwhile purchasing to be able to make some things with. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic night. Bye!